Marcus Aurelius wrote this for mornings like yours, when discipline feels heavy.
Before the sun rises and the world begins to demand pieces of you, there is a quiet moment that decides everything. Most people sleep through it. Or they wake and immediately hand their mind to noise, worry, and anticipation. Marcus Aurelius warned against this exact weakness. He wrote to himself not to impress anyone, but to survive the day with dignity. He understood that the morning is not a neutral space. It is a battleground. What you allow into your mind in those first moments becomes the lens through which the entire day is interpreted. If you begin weak, reactive, and scattered, you will live weak, reactive, and scattered. Mental strength is not something you stumble into later. It is claimed deliberately, early, when no one is watching. You wake up and the body resists. It wants comfort. It wants delay. It whispers that discipline can wait, that seriousness is unnecessary, that today can be handled casually. Marcus Aurelius addressed this voice directly. He reminded himself that he was not born for comfort but for function, not for ease but for excellence of character. This is the first rule of mental strength. In the morning you do not negotiate with weakness. You observe it, you acknowledge it, and you act anyway. The Stoic does not wait to feel ready. He understands that readiness is a byproduct of action, not a prerequisite. As you sit up, before your feet touch the ground, you decide what kind of mind you will carry into the world. The untrained mind wakes up already complaining, already anxious, already chasing outcomes it cannot control. The Stoic mind wakes up grounded in reality. Marcus reminded himself that he would meet interference, ingratitude, arrogance, dishonesty, and selfishness that day, not as a form of pessimism, but as preparation. This is not negative thinking. This is clarity. When you expect difficulty, you are not surprised by it. When you are not surprised, you are not shaken. Mental strength begins with refusing to be shocked by human behavior. Most suffering comes not from events, but from the demand that events be different than they are. In the morning, the Stoic strips away this demand. He tells himself that people will act according to their nature, that circumstances will unfold according to forces far larger than his preferences, and that his only true responsibility is the quality of his own response. This single realization removes an enormous weight from the mind. You stop waking up braced for battle with reality. You wake up aligned with it. Marcus Aurelius trained his mind to separate what belongs to him from what does not. Your thoughts, your judgments, your actions, your effort, these are yours. The weather, the economy, other people as opinions, the past, the outcome, these are not. In the morning before distraction floods in, you reinforce this boundary. Mental strength is clarity of ownership. Weak minds attempt to control everything and collapse under the effort. Strong minds control themselves and remain unshaken. There is also humility in this practice. You remind yourself that you are not special, not exempt, not entitled to an easy path. You are a human being among human beings, subject to fatigue, error, and impermanence. This is not self-criticism. It is grounding. When you abandon the fantasy of exception, you stop resenting the normal hardships of life. You meet them with composure instead of complaint. The Stoic morning is also a rehearsal of values. Marcus Aurelius did not wake up asking what he could gain. He asked how he could act in accordance with reason, justice, courage, and self-control. Mental strength is not aggression. It is alignment. You remind yourself that you will act fairly even when it is inconvenient, speak truthfully even when it costs you, and remain calm even when provoked. This commitment, renewed daily, builds a kind of inner armor. You no longer improvise your character under pressure. You have already decided who you are. Many people wait for motivation to arrive before they take responsibility. Marcus Aurelius understood that motivation is unreliable. Discipline is not a feeling, it is a decision repeated until it becomes identity. In the morning, you do not ask yourself what you feel like doing. You ask what needs to be done by a rational, disciplined human being. This question cuts through excuses. It bypasses emotion and appeals directly to character. You also remind yourself of impermanence. not in a morbid way, but in a clarifying one. Marcus wrote often about the shortness of life, about how quickly all things pass into memory and then into nothing. When you begin the day with this awareness, trivial concerns lose their grip, petty insults shrink, delays lose their power. You stop treating every inconvenience as a personal attack. Mental strength grows when perspective expands. There is a quiet confidence that comes from this practice. You are no longer rushing to prove yourself, no longer desperate for validation, no longer terrified of loss. You understand that everything external is borrowed, temporary, and ultimately indifferent. What remains is the quality of your mind and the integrity of your actions. This realization is freeing. You step into the daylight as steadier, harder to disturb. The morning is also when you accept effort without resentment. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that work is not a punishment but a natural function. Just as a bee fulfills its role by producing honey, a human fulfills his by acting in service of reason and the common good. When you internalize this, you stop framing discipline as suffering. You see it as expression. You are not forcing yourself to be disciplined. You are being what you are meant to be. Mental strength is not loud. It does not announce itself. It is built quietly, consistently in moments like this. When no one is watching, when excuses are easiest, when comfort is closest. Each morning you choose clarity over confusion, responsibility over avoidance, and reason over impulse. You reinforce a structure inside yourself. Over time, that structure becomes unbreakable. By the time the world reaches you, you are already standing. You are not scrambling to orient yourself. You are not reactive. You are not asking the day to go easy on you. You are ready to meet it as it is. This is the foundation. This is where mental strength begins. As the day begins to move toward you, there is a second layer to this morning discipline that Marcus Aurelius understood deeply, guarding the mind from unnecessary intrusion. Mental strength is not built only by what you think, but by what you refuse to let in. Most people surrender their attention immediately. Notifications, headlines, other people's moods, imagined futures, all of it rushes in before the mind has found its footing. The Stoic does the opposite. He delays the world. He claims sovereignty over his inner state first. Marcus reminded himself that the mind becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. This is not poetry, it is instruction. Whatever you dwell on early will stain the rest of the day. If you begin with resentment, you will notice insults everywhere. If you begin with fear, every obstacle will appear threatening. If you begin with clarity and purpose, even difficulty will feel manageable. The morning is when you choose the die. Mental strength is not about suppressing emotion, but about directing attention deliberately. There is also an active practice of restraint here. You do not rush to judge. You do not rush to react. Marcus trained himself to pause internally even when the body was moving. He understood that most errors are born from speed, quick assumptions, instant outrage, immediate defense. In the morning you rehearse slowness of judgment. You remind yourself that appearances deceive, that first impressions are incomplete, and that patience is a form of intelligence. This restraint gives you leverage over situations that would overwhelm a reactive mind. Another rule emerges here: you do not carry yesterday into today. Marcus Aurelius warned against dragging the past forward unnecessarily. Regret, resentment, unresolved arguments, these are weights that exhaust the mind before the day has even begun. Mental strength requires a kind of internal cleanliness. You acknowledge what happened, extract the lesson, and release the emotional residue. The past is information, not a prison. Each morning is a reset, not because life is forgiving, but because clinging is irrational. The Stoic morning also involves a subtle but powerful shift in identity. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and start seeing yourself as a steward of response. This is not denial of hardship. Marcus Aurelius faced war, plague, betrayal, and constant pressure. His strength came not from a lack of problems, but from a refusal to internalize them as damage. He understood that events happen to the body and to position, but only judgments harm the mind. When you wake up with this understanding, you are harder to injure. There is an honesty required here that many avoid. You must confront your own tendencies toward laziness, distraction, and self-indulgence. Marcus did not flatter himself. He spoke to himself plainly, sometimes harshly, because clarity mattered more than comfort. Mental strength grows when you stop lying to yourself about why you delay, why you avoid, why you complain. In the morning, you name these patterns without drama and without self-hatred. You simply see them. Awareness weakens their grip. You also reaffirm commitment to effort without guarantee. This is crucial. Many people only work hard when success feels likely. Marcus Aurelius rejected this condition. He believed that virtue is measured by intention and action, not outcome. In the morning, you remind yourself that you will act rightly even if results are slow, recognition is absent, or progress is invisible. This frees you from the emotional roller coaster of external validation. You become steady because your standard is internal. Another quiet rule emerges: you do not seek admiration for discipline. Marcus practiced privately. He wrote to himself, not to an audience. Mental strength deteriorates when it becomes performative. When discipline exists to impress, it collapses under neglect. In the morning, you recommit to quiet excellence. You do what must be done whether anyone notices or not. This builds a kind of self-respect that no praise can replace. There is also compassion here, though it is often misunderstood. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that people act poorly out of ignorance, not malice. This perspective does not excuse wrongdoing, but it dissolves hatred. Hatred consumes mental energy. It narrows perception. Mental strength requires conservation of inner resources. When you wake up prepared to encounter flawed people without contempt, you protect your own stability. You stop leaking energy into resentment. The Stoic morning is not rigid or joyless. It is calm. There is a sense of quiet readiness. You are not rushing toward pleasure or running from pain. You are standing in the middle, balanced. Marcus believed that tranquility comes from aligning desire with reality. When you stop demanding that life conform to your preferences, you experience a strange peace, even amid effort. This peace is not passivity. It is controlled intensity. As the morning progresses, you move with intention. You speak less internally. You argue less with reality. You focus on what is in front of you. This is another rule: do not scatter attention across imagined futures. Marcus warned against living as if you had 10,000 years ahead of you. He urged himself to act now fully, without delay. Mental strength is presence sharpened by urgency, not anxiety. You begin to notice a change when this practice becomes consistent. The mind feels less noisy. Reactions slow. Confidence becomes quieter and more stable. Problems still appear, but they no longer feel personal. You are not constantly defending an ego. You are executing a role. This shift is profound. Life stops feeling like a series of emotional tests and starts feeling like a disciplined practice. By the time the morning ends, you are not exhausted. You are oriented. You have not spent your energy resisting the inevitable. You have conserved it for action. This is the difference between strength and strain. Strength is efficient. It wastes nothing on unnecessary struggle. Marcus Aurelius understood that no single morning makes you strong. It is repetition that forges resilience. Each day you fail, you begin again. Each day you succeed, you remain vigilant. There is no finish line, only maintenance. Mental strength is not a peak you reach. It is a standard you uphold. This is how the Stoic morning shapes the rest of life. Not through dramatic rituals or extreme measures, but through quiet, disciplined alignment with reason. When you listen every morning to these rules, not as words but as principles, you build a mind that does not collapse under pressure. You become steady, not because the world is gentle, but because you are prepared to meet it as it is. As this discipline deepens, something subtle but powerful happens. You stop negotiating with yourself about what must be done. Marcus Aurelius understood that inner conflict drains more energy than hard work itself. Most people are not tired from effort. They are tired from hesitation. They wake up already arguing, should I do this? Should I avoid that? Should I push today or rest? The Stoic resolves this before the day begins. When the mind is settled on duty, action becomes lighter. Mental strength also grows through acceptance of discomfort. Marcus never promised himself ease. He reminded himself that the body will feel resistance, boredom, and strain, and that none of these are threats. In the morning, you prepare for mild suffering without dramatizing it. Cold, effort, repetition, and silence are not enemies, they are training grounds. When discomfort arrives later in the day, it feels familiar rather than alarming. This familiarity is strength. Another morning rule emerges: you do not confuse emotion with truth. Feelings rise and fall like weather, but reason remains available if you consult it. Marcus wrote that the mind has the power to withdraw into itself and find calm at any moment. This is not suppression, it is perspective. When you wake up acknowledging that today you may feel unmotivated, irritated, or doubtful, and that none of these feelings command obedience, you free yourself from emotional tyranny. There is also a practice of narrowing focus. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly warned against being busy without purpose. Mental strength is not scattered productivity, it is directed effort. In the morning, you decide what deserves your best attention and what does not. You accept that many things will go undone, and you are at peace with that. This clarity prevents burnout and regret. You are no longer chasing everything, you are choosing deliberately. The Stoic morning trains humility as well. Marcus reminded himself that he was small in the vastness of time and nature. This was not meant to diminish him, but to correct inflated self-importance. When you begin the day aware that you are a brief part of a larger order, insults sting less, failures feel lighter, and success does not intoxicate you. Humility stabilizes the mind. It removes the pressure to be exceptional and replaces it with the resolve to be useful. There is a quiet courage that forms here. You stop needing certainty before acting. Marcus accepted that outcomes are uncertain and that control is limited. Mental strength is not about guaranteeing success. It is about acting well regardless. In the morning, you rehearse this acceptance. You tell yourself that you would do your part and release the rest. This detachment is not apathy, it is freedom from fear. You also strengthen your relationship with solitude. Marcus Aurelius valued moments alone with his thoughts, not as escape, but as recalibration. In the morning, even a few minutes of intentional silence can anchor the day. You observe your thoughts without immediately engaging them. You notice patterns, complaints, worries, ambitions without feeding them. This observation creates space between impulse and action. That space is where strength lives. As days pass, the benefits compound. You become harder to provoke. Praise does not inflate you, and criticism does not crush you. You start to notice that many conflicts no longer reach you not because you avoid them, but because you are no longer reactive. This is not weakness, it is dominance over oneself, which Marcus considered the highest form of power. Another essential rule is remembrance of mortality. Marcus frequently reminded himself that life is brief and that death can arrive at any moment. This was not morbid, it was clarifying. In the morning, remembering impermanence strips away trivial concerns. You waste less time on petty grievances and empty pursuits. Urgency becomes clean, not anxious. You act with seriousness, but also with gratitude. Over time, the morning discipline reshapes identity. You no longer see yourself as someone trying to become strong. You see yourself as someone who practices strength daily. This shift matters. Identity drives behavior. When discipline becomes who you are rather than what you attempt, consistency follows naturally. There will still be days when the mind feels heavy. Marcus anticipated this and did not despair. He understood that progress is uneven. Mental strength includes patience with oneself. When you fail to uphold your standards, you do not collapse into self-contempt. You correct course. You return to reason. You begin again the next morning without resentment. This is the essence of Stoic mental strength, reliability. Not intensity that burns out, but steadiness that endures. The world may become louder, faster, and more chaotic, but your inner posture remains controlled. You are not waiting for perfect conditions to live well. You are prepared to live well now. And this is why listening every morning matters, not because the words themselves are magical, but because repetition trains perception. Each morning you reinforce what matters, what does not, and who you choose to be. Over months and years, this practice compounds quietly, invisibly, until one day you realize that challenges that once overwhelmed you now feel manageable. Marcus Aurelius did not promise happiness. He promised resilience. He did not offer escape from struggle. He offered mastery within it. When you adopt these morning rules not as inspiration, but as discipline, you build a mind that can withstand pressure without breaking. This is not a transformation others may immediately notice. It is internal. But it changes everything. You walk through the day grounded, deliberate, and unshaken. And that, in the Stoic sense, is true mental strength. And as this strength settles in, you begin to understand something Marcus Aurelius lived by but never dramatized. The goal is not to dominate the world, but to stop being dominated by it. Events lose their power to pull you apart. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of drift. This is why Stoic discipline starts in the morning, because whoever governs the first thoughts of the day quietly governs the rest. You stop waking up as a victim of circumstance. You wake up as a participant in order. Marcus reminded himself that nature gave him reason for a purpose, not for comfort. When you accept this, frustration softens. Life is no longer unfair, it is simply demanding, and you are built to meet demands, not complain about them. Mental strength also teaches restraint in speech. You realize that not every thought deserves expression. Marcus warned against speaking unnecessarily, especially when driven by ego or irritation. In the morning you prepare yourself to speak less and observe more. This single habit prevents countless regrets. Silence becomes a form of power. When you do speak, your words carry weight. Another layer forms: consistency between values and action. Many people admire Stoicism intellectually but abandon it under pressure. Marcus insisted that philosophy must be lived, not quoted. Each morning you remind yourself that today is a test, not a rehearsal. Every interaction is an opportunity to practice patience, courage, fairness, and self-control. This awareness sharpens attention. Life becomes training, not chaos. You also stop outsourcing your peace. Marcus understood that relying on external validation is a fragile strategy. Praise fades. Approval shifts. In the morning, you ground your worth in effort and integrity, not outcomes. You judge yourself by whether you acted according to reason, not by applause. This internal standard stabilizes confidence. You become harder to manipulate and easier to trust. Over time, anxiety loses its grip. Not because problems disappear, but because you stop catastrophizing them. Marcus taught that most suffering comes not from events, but from judgments about events. In the morning, you rehearse this truth. You tell yourself that today may bring difficulty, but difficulty is not disaster. This framing keeps the nervous system calmer, the mind flexible. There is also an ethical clarity that develops. You begin to ask not, "What do I feel like doing?" but "What is the right thing to do?" This question simplifies life. It cuts through confusion. When the answer is clear, hesitation fades. Even when the answer is uncomfortable, there is peace and alignment. As the days stack up, you notice something profound. Discipline creates freedom. The more reliably you govern yourself, the less external forces can govern you. You are no longer pushed around by impulse, mood, or fear. You move with intention. This is the freedom. Marcus Aurelius valued not indulgence, but self-command. Eventually, the morning rules no longer feel like rules. They feel like reminders of who you already are. You wake up steady. You face the world without armor because your mind is trained. You do not need to control others. You control your judgments. You do not chase peace. You practice it. This is the quiet legacy of Marcus Aurelius. Not dramatic transformation, but unshakable orientation. a mind that returns to reason again and again, a life lived with dignity regardless of circumstance. If you listen every morning not passively, but with commitment, you are not borrowing strength from ancient words. You are activating your own. And that strength does not announce itself. It endures. That is Stoic mental strength.